Hey Dungebags, what's going on? It's Landon Remixes here, and it is time for my review of the third studio album from Illenium, Ascend. Illenium, aka Nick Miller, is a DJ, producer, and live performer based in Denver, Colorado. He has taken the electronic dance music scene by storm over the last few years with his distinct, recognizable brand of melodic dubstep, which a multitude of people refer to as simply sad boy music. It's a blend of melodic dubstep inspired by Seven Lions, Porter Robinson, Odessa, generally combining these big, powerful, synth-driven chords with a more acoustic leaning instrumental palette from its guitars to its percussion, as well as gorgeous brooding vocals and often glitches a la Porter Robinson's Worlds. This blend of styles came as a breath of fresh air to pretty much the highest degree in 2016 when Illenium released his debut album Ashes. Prior to that, I had only heard of Illenium through his remix of Disarm You by Cascade, so when Ashes ended up going #1 on the iTunes electronic music charts, I was caught a bit off guard, and when I finally got around to listening to the project, I was hit pretty much out of left field. It had just the right melodic flair that I felt like dubstep was heavily missing at the time. It was an extremely original project. I can't say I had heard anything quite like it up to that point before, and from that point forward, I considered myself a pretty big fan of Nick's. Now, given how refreshing of a project I thought Ashes was, you can imagine my disappointment when Illenium's sophomore album, Awake, wasn't quite that. Now, don't get me wrong, I didn't think Awake was a particularly bad album by any stretch. There were a few really good songs in that album done in Illenium's signature style: Crawl Outta Love, Fractures, Leaving, and Feel Good. However, a good chunk of the songs on Awake to me felt more like tributes to the artists that inspired Illenium than him thoughtfully expanding his horizons as a producer, and I'm sure to most people that was perfectly fine, probably why my review of Awake is one of my most hated in my channel's history. But for me, somebody who's a longtime fan of Seven Lions and Porter, and who quite likes Odessa too, this project just wasn't really cutting it for me. Despite all that, I had pretty high hopes for Illenium's third studio album, especially when the singles for it started rolling out, with the album's lead single, Take You Down, being, in my book, the most emotionally charged song Miller has ever written, with him really diving deeper than ever before, writing about his past in drug addiction and the ways that it affected his family. Also featuring, in my opinion, one of the most tear-jerking melodies and chord progressions I had heard in an Illenium song up to that point. After that point, I had kind of tried to stay away from the album singles because I like to experience an album with fresh ears when I get into it for the first time, but when it came to Good Things Fall Apart with Jon Bellion, I couldn't help myself. I consider myself to be quite the big fan of Bellion's work. In fact, in 2016, the same year that Ashes released, The Human Condition by Jon Bellion was my album of the year. But Good Things Fall Apart caught me off guard in a really good way, and in a way that I was hoping it would. It doesn't sound too much like your standard Illenium song. It doesn't sound too much like your standard Jon Bellion song. They met somewhere in the middle to a really good result, with Miller's acoustic talents and organic beats blending in perfectly with Bellion's nostalgic lyricism and colorful melodies. It feels perfectly Illenium and Jon Bellion simultaneously, which I feel like all collaborations should strive to do. So at that point, I can definitely say I was pretty excited to see what exactly we were going to get with Ascend. And upon getting to actually listen to the full album, I've got to say, I'm pretty pleased with it. Now, I'm going to get it right out of the way. I don't think Ascend is an absolutely perfect project, and I don't even think it's his best work, but I think part of that can be credited to the fact that Ascend is a full 7 tracks longer than Ashes, spanning almost 20 minutes longer. It would have been insanely difficult for Miller to craft a 17-track album where every single song just hits perfectly with me. In fact, I can't even really think of any albums over 15 tracks that manage to do that for me. Not to say that I have a super short attention span or anything like that, I just find it a lot easier to like every single track on a project that's 5 to 10 tracks long. Anyway, I'm getting a little bit off topic. In general, I'd say Ascend is pretty much everything I had hoped Awake would be, where it's Miller kind of expanding his sound to a lot of different styles, effectively experimenting through pushing himself into numerous new territories, while the project remains consistent and cohesive because it's all generally tied back into those signature Illenium elements that we came to know on Ashes. The best examples, in my opinion, of Miller being able to do this beyond Good Things Fall Apart are on That's Why, a song done in collaboration with Golden, which sees Miller kind of taking a stab at the emo rap type sound, effectively taking the term sad boy music to a whole new level of depth. And with this, I feel like surprisingly, Illenium's signature sound blends in really nice with it. I mean, maybe it's surprising to me and no one else, I have no idea, but I think it works pretty well on this track. The melodic drops in the song provide some really well-needed spacing between the more depressive verses on the song. I especially like those Odessa-influenced vocal licks that play in the background during the drop, the hoo, and the last drop pays off so nicely with a, I guess, more rock-centric instrumental palette. The song Crashing featuring Bahari is also a very refreshing turn of Illenium's signature style. Not to say what he goes for on this song came completely out of left field, but it's a nice little pop tune, and as cheesy as it is, it rolls off really well. It's an extremely pretty song, definitely one of the highlights on the project for me, but I also like how it's a different turn for lyricism in Illenium's music, because I guess it's less emo and more just about a passionate relationship, which we haven't really seen much on an Illenium song before. Come to think of it, I guess there's Feel Good and Spirals, but that doesn't take away how refreshing of a song this is on this album. Unlike I expected, Every Piece of Me, done in collaboration with Echoes, isn't just an Afterlife 2.0. In fact, it's very different. A much more reserved ballad, a bit of a break from the chaos of this project. This song could have fit in very snug with a lot of the other songs on Echoes' project, Even Though You're Gone, which isn't actually a huge complaint. I think it works really nicely in this album's context. Pray featuring Cameron Alexander sees Illenium giving a bit of a nod to his DJ sets with more heavy dubstep sounds. The song feels like it's on an epic-sized scale, and I think the dubstep drops pair really nicely with that. Though I have a sneaking suspicion that Illenium might have stolen some Kill the Noise presets from the Don't Give Up On Me project file. That's kind of what it sounds like to me, but I'm not complaining if he did because I think it works fine on this song. In Your Arms is kind of a funny one to me. On one of my first listens through this album, I was on the road with my girlfriend and I kind of nudged her and said, you know, it's funny, Illenium isn't a country music producer and ex-ambassadors don't make country music, but this song actually sounds like it's something pulled directly from like country music radio. I don't absolutely love the song, and it's not even really one of my highlights on the project, but I do appreciate how they kind of went for a different sound, even if I didn't love the result all that much. Gorgeous, done in collaboration with Blank and Bipolar Sunshine, sees Illenium taking on the mid-tempo electro style for the first time, and I'd say to a pretty good result just considering the three artists who worked on this thing. Didn't really see this as a project that was going to work in really any capacity. I mean, I was excited for Blank and really happy for him getting the exposure and everything, but yeah, I wasn't imagining this song was going to be all that fantastic. I think part of the reason this song works so well is because Bipolar Sunshine on his vocal appearance went a bit harder than he usually does. A little bit more aggressive, I guess I'd say, than usual. And then also the more Illenium sounding melodic drop of the song makes it feel pretty cohesive. While I'm at it, I have to compliment Illenium on the fact that the whole last leg of this album, Sad Songs Through Lonely, just transitions so perfectly together. Each song just sits so smoothly right after the song before it. I wish this could be said about the entire album because honestly it might have bumped it up into like top tier territory for me, but I really like the gesture. I really appreciate Illenium doing that for people like me who really enjoy stuff like that. Beyond those songs, you could say there's a good handful of tunes on this LP where it pretty much just sounds like a standard Illenium song, though I don't think any of them really flopped. The song Hold On is one that I'd kind of throw into this category, though I enjoy it quite a bit, especially thanks to Georgia Koo's gorgeous melodic talk top line. Nothing absolutely profound, but I think it's a nice poppy take on Illenium's style that works pretty well. I also quite like how, for the first time, I believe, Illenium plays a little bit with film dialogue sampling on the intro, I Care, which pulls some fitting dialogue from The Breakfast Club. The song Broken Ones with Anna Clendening is another one that I think is kind of your standard Illenium tune. This song doesn't really do all that much for me. I mean, I don't dislike it, but I don't really love it either. To me, it kind of seems like it's supposed to be this anthem for, you know, broken people, but not to say I'm not broken myself, because God knows I am, but just in the back of my mind, it feels a little forced to me, especially when you consider a good chunk of Illenium's fan base, the type of people he's trying to appeal to. He's doing exactly that with this song. And then last in this category, there's the album's closer, Lonely, with Chandler Layton. And I think this song was probably the perfect way to close the album. It's your signature Illenium type song, but I think that was probably what I would have wanted to close the album anyway, similarly to Afterlife on Ashes. And in addition to that, it's just such a beautiful piece, like probably one of my new favorites from him. It just like hits you with all the feels, all the emotions all at once, and it's just insane. A couple other things that I felt positively toward this album before we get into the negative things. I guess Takeaway is a pretty decent song, though I don't really entirely see the need for it on this album, because I'm pretty sure it's going to be on the Chainsmokers' World War Joy, though I think it's one of the better Chainsmokers tunes we've heard in a minute. I just don't really think it was all that necessary for this album. I see why it was put on, considering this is Illenium's major label debut, but, you know, coming from a personal standpoint, I would have, you know, done without it. And then Sad Songs in collaboration with Said the Sky and Annika Wells is another one of the big highlights on the album for me. After being thoroughly disappointed with the Divinity ripoff Where'd You Go from Said the Sky and Illenium on Awake, this song was a breath of fresh air. Of course, Annika Wells was one of my favorite collaborators on Awake with Crawl Out of Love. This song takes its time with its pacing, starting off very ballad-like and slowly building into the drop, which is this nice, smooth blend of Illenium and Said the Sky. It almost sounds like it could have come off of Said the Sky's Wide-Eyed album, but I am totally okay with that because it just works so well. Now, if I haven't talked about your favorite song in this album up to this point, you might want to click off the video and just, you know, take away what I've said, because I'm going to move forward leaving some negative things for this final segment of the video, given I guess that's only two songs that I really genuinely did not like on this project, but still. Blood in collaboration with Foy Vance, I am not crazy about in the slightest. I think Foy Vance's vocal style is fine, and I would love to see Illenium kind of play with that again, but maybe with a little bit more of a soft song that kind of goes and takes a more folk type direction instead, because I feel like the contrast between the vocal and the drop just don't work at all. We've got Illenium trying to pump out his heaviest dubstep song yet, with a vocal that, in my opinion, just doesn't really work with that. I'm also just not really into the lyrics of this song. They seem a little bit over the top to me, you know, with Foy Vance singing about what I assume to be a family member or a close friend that he wants to protect and care for. I will say about this song, I do like the last drop quite a bit, and I wish the song would have gone in that direction. I probably would have liked it a lot more. And lastly, we've got All Together, which in my humble opinion is by and large the worst song on this album. Now, I understand that the song is supposed to be this kind of like, oh, everybody needs to come together. If we all just work together, we can make the world a better place. And like, that's fine, but it just uses this ridiculous anti-religious logic that I don't understand the need for at all. It's like when they sat down to write the lyrics of this song, they were like, hey, let's make a song that's like Imagine by John Lennon, but like a lot worse and more preachy somehow. The general premise of the song is essentially like, hey, if we were in a world where there's no religions and no like political leaders trying to divide us by, you know, whatever, the world would be such a better place. It would just be sunshine and rainbows and happiness if we all just, you know, could work together, if like religion was out of the picture. The problem with this is it just doesn't make any sense. You take God out of the picture, you take political leaders, you take racism, you take whatever else, you've still got terrible, tragic things happening across the world, like incels running over people with vans. Not religious or racially motivated or anything like that. Things like this happen because people are flawed and people are terrible. To this song's credit, sure, if all religion was somehow completely eradicated from the world all at once, you know, a lot of conflicts would be solved. But that's certainly not the root of all the world's problems or anything like that, or whatever this song is trying to imply. Make a song about how people are constantly miscommunicating with each other, not willing to listen and understand and respect each other. That's the root of conflict in this world. I didn't want to go off on too much of a tangent here, so I'm sorry about that, but I've got to say, it just really bugs me. That faulty religious logic is one of the reasons I really didn't care for Illenium's single God Damn It. I was pretty excited when that song didn't end up on this album's track list, but then we got something which is debatably even worse, so I'm a little bit frustrated in that regard, but I'm trying my best to just ignore the song and enjoy the rest of the album for what it is. And yeah, that's pretty much everything that I have to say about Ascend. I guess to wrap things up, I'd say that Illenium didn't quite hit his full potential on this project, but he came pretty darn close, expanding his horizons into unexpected genres around pretty much every bend, pairing up with collaborators he's got a lot of chemistry with, even if there's a couple obvious like major label stick-ins here and there. This project is undoubtedly what I had hoped for Illenium's sophomore album, and I'm glad it's finally happened, though admittedly for his next project, I'm hoping that he decides to take a bit of a different direction, something in the same tier of innovation as Ashes. But for now, I think I'll be spinning this sad boy music on repeat for a while. For Ascend, I am personally feeling a light 8 out of 10. As always, if you haven't listened to this album yet, check the Spotify link down in the description below. If you haven't subscribed yet and you're into content like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button, and if you enjoyed the review, toss me a like. Also, let me know what your thoughts are about the album down in the comment section below, and I'm sure by this point in the review you guys already have. Anyway, I'm Landon Remixes, and I'll see you guys next time. Peace.